Good morning, guys. Vikas, Hemant, JP, Koti. What happened to your practice snapshots?
Oh, Babu, I'm sending now. I forgot to send last night.
Babu, I will send today.
Yeah.
I'll also send today.
Don't delay, guys. You have to do practice on every day. By this time, you must have noticed it. The difficulty of Kubernetes. Okay. All you need to send by today. Otherwise, no class tomorrow. Right. Today we are going to discuss, okay, how many of you have deployed the metric server? Sharath?
Yeah, I have done it.
So what is the purpose of metric server, guys?
To collect the matrices of the pods.
Pods, nodes, right?
Yeah.
So is it mandatory that we need to run the metric server?
It is always better to monitor them
Right.
apart from Kubernetes. Yeah.
Right. It is good to run the metric server because we need to use that metric server for other purpose as well. So
Like collection of logs like that.
Who is asking that question?
Satish.
Satish, you tell me. Can we collect the logs by using the metric server? Have you attended the class yesterday?
Yeah, attended.
Okay, so now you tell me, can we collect the logs by using the metric server?
No, Babu.
Not possible. It is for collect the metrics only.
Metrics.
So for
Okay.
collecting the logs, you have different tools. EFK. Have you come across EFK? Elasticsearch, Fluentd, Kibana. Okay, we will deploy that.
Okay.
Right. Okay, let us start. Today we are going to discuss about the DaemonSet. What exactly the purpose of DaemonSet? So what is the purpose of a deployment, guys? What is the purpose of deployment? What is the purpose of replica set?
Deployment refers to one or more multiple pods.
Okay, even stateful set also will do that.
Okay.
What is the purpose of deployment set? What is the purpose of deployment? Speak out, guys. Vikas, what is the purpose of deployment? Yeah, Vijay, go ahead.
It is to maintain the new versions of or
rolling updates.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
updates and rollback to manage.
For rolling updates and rollbacks to maintain the versions. Right. Then what is the purpose of replica set?
to have
Maintain
multiple.
scalability.
No. What do you mean by scalability?
Means scaling of pods.
No. What is the purpose of replica set, guys?
It is to provide the high availability.
Right. Yes. To provide the high availability for your pods. You should know the purpose of each component. There is no duplication here. So each one has its own usage here. Like that, So when you are having a replica set, when you are having a deployment, then why should we go for another component, daemon set? For example, I want to deploy, a pod on each node, something like logging. If you take your EFK, so Fluentd will be running the client on all the nodes, So it is going to collect the logs from the pods that are running on that node. So if a node comes online, this pod has to come on that. If the node goes down, it has to remove that, and there is no point of running two clients on each node. So we need to run only one instance. Right? So there would be requirement like that. For example, Fluentd. Okay, a logging client which will collect the logs and it will be sending to the server. Right, if that is the requirement, can we achieve that by using the deployment? Definitely no. In the deployment, you have an option to define the number of replicas, but you do not have a dedicated option to deploy only one instance on all the nodes. You do not have such option in your deployment. So we are going for another object called DaemonSet. Right. Let us see how can we create a DaemonSet. Right. kubectl get. Okay, let us create a DaemonSet. kubectl create -help. Do you have a imperative way of creating the DaemonSet? Definitely no, we do not have. How do you know? You can see here. Can you find a DaemonSet here? Deployment is there, but not DaemonSet. So you have only imperative way. vi ds1.yaml. By mistake, if I forget to start recording, please let me know, guys. So you need to go for a reference page. And you can search here also. You can, but you cannot open two tabs in your certification, guys. Only one. Give me a second, guys. Right. Here you have a DaemonSet spec. So you can start writing the DaemonSet spec. You can find an example spec also here. You can find an example spec also here. Don't fear by looking at the length of the spec. I'll show you how can we write it easy way. By the way, in CK compulsory question case, DaemonSet, they will be asking a simple question only. Okay, they will not make it complex. But writing the spec itself is complex. It will take time, right? So in examination, you will be already intense. On top of that, if you come across any mistake or previous question, you are not able to solve it. So all those tensions you will be having in your exam. Apps V1, right? Version apps V1. Kind DaemonSet. D capital, S capital, guys. If you guys are not speaking, you can mute yourself. DS1. Spec. Okay. According to the explanation that we had, should we maintain the replica count? Definitely no. Why? I am saying if the node comes, you deploy one pod on that node. If the node goes down, remove that. So if that is the case, why do you need to maintain the replica count? Definitely not. So you will not be having a replica count here. Template. Selector. So it is almost the way that it is going to work almost in the same way of deployments. In the same way of deployments. Except that it need to be created. Except that it need to be created on each node. Rest of the things and all same. So update strategy is also fine. Update strategy is also same like your deployment only. Okay, right. Selector, whatever that you are defining in the selector, that is part of the labels that you have given, because it is going to maintain the high availability. It is going to maintain the high availability like a replica set. Template. So here the pod template will come into the picture. Metadata. Metadata and spec. Right? So you already know this. You already know this. So let us have the name DS1 labels app Mintra. So the same thing that I should use for the selectors, right? So what should I use for the selectors? Either matching labels or matching expressions. What is the difference, guys? Purpose is same. You can write the complex expressions in your matching expressions. You can say app colon Mintra. Under the spec, this is going to be the pod spec. Under the spec, so this, the indentation is very important, guys. The indentation is very important. If it misses the indentation, then it will fail. The validation itself will fail. Spec template pod spec name and containers, that is sufficient for me. Name, container, containers. Containers is of type an array, name, image. This is the container name. I'll use the Nginx. Right? What else that I want? I think this information is sufficient. So what is the default strategy for your deployment? Recreate or rolling out. Update strategy. So here also same thing. So what is the default one?
Rolling update.
Default one is the rolling update. Means if you don't mention, I am not mentioning, let it be, take the default one, right? That is the meaning of the default, guys. Right, kubectl apply ds1 -dry -run -dry -run. Okay, the syntax is perfect. Kubectl get ds. Ds is the shortcut for your DaemonSet. Not yet ready. So it should be in ready state. The meaning of ready is it is accepting the traffic, guys. Right. So everything is ready. Why I haven't mentioned the number of replicas as 2, but why it has created 2?
We have two nodes.
Right.
Two nodes. Two.
Yeah, we have 2 nodes. That is the reason why the number of replicas are 2. Right? Now, if I delete one node, so the number of replicas will become automatically 1. Okay, if I add a third node, so the number of replicas are going to be 3. Automatic it is. Automatic. So either deployment or DaemonSet. So definitely it is going to have the pods. It is going to have the pods. Where is the DS? DS, right? It is going to have the pods. So you will not be relying on the pod IP addresses, right? Since those are going to be ephemeral, you can see here. If I delete this, KDF. If I delete this, again it is going to create. You see here, 7 seconds back it has created. Again it is going to create. So the way that it is working will not change. Okay, but either deployment or DaemonSet, you will not be exposing the pod IPs directly. Instead, what you will be doing, you will be creating a service, right? How can I create a service? Hemant, how can we create a service?
kubectl create, then service SVC.
Right. Have you created the service like that?
Yes, I have created. Yes.
Okay. Are you sure that you have created service only by this way, or did you find any other way?
No, I have created only the way you said here.
So do you know about the expose command?
Yes,
kubectl
yes.
expose.
Yes,
What is the purpose of that?
To expose the internal and the outer.
No.
by
What is the purpose of kubectl expose command, guys?
To expose the port.
No. I am not asking about Docker run expose. I am asking about kubectl expose, guys. What is this? How do you create a service?
We can create the service in 3 ways. One is
Right.
expose.
So one of the way is expose, right?
Yes.
So what is the difference?
If you using command line kubectl create, we need to mention the port.
Yeah, actually, yes. So you need to take the labels of the underlying ports and you need to specify the in the selector session of your service. If you create by using kubectl create, but I told that that is not the best way of doing that. Whenever you create a deployment or daemon set, you use expose command. So expose automatically takes the objects required things. So labels it is going to take. Labels of the underlying ports it is going to take and it is going to update as a selector of your service. Right? So it is always good to go with expose. Right, Hemant? You got it now?
Yes, yes, Prabhu.
DS1. Because I know if anybody asks in the interview, how do you create a service? You will tell kubectl create. Okay, but we will not be, you will not be doing like that, right? This is the simple way. And this is the recommended also. So to avoid the mistakes, taking the ports, taking the labels, to avoid that, they have given this command, kubectl expose, DaemonSet. What is the DaemonSet name? DS1. Cannot expose the DaemonSet. Deployment is there. Replica set is there. Replication control is there. Service is there. Right? I don't think that they have DaemonSet. Expose RC pod, yes. They do not have a DaemonSet. They will be having a expose option only for these objects: pod, service, RC, deployment, and RS. So now how can we create a service? So you can create a spec. You can create a spec. And inside that, you can take the labels of your pods. What are the labels of your pods? kubectl get pods pipe grep ds hyphen show hyphen labels. Show hyphen labels. You can see the label. So you can take this label and you can keep it as a selector of your service. So what will happen? Your service IP will be exposed, and underlying it is going to create the endpoints. It is going to distribute the traffic. It is going to distribute the traffic, right? So general case, when do you use the daemon set? I told you, like when you have a requirement, where you need to run the pod instance of the application on all the nodes, something like monitoring things. So those things, when you are doing it, you will be deploying as a daemon set instead of the deployment. But for example, if you ask me, so sir, can I create my application as a deployment or a daemon set? You can use anything. Doesn't matter. But it's based upon number of nodes that you are maintaining and number of instances that you are expecting. For example, when you are running 100 nodes, do you want 100 instances of your application? Not required. 4 instances are fine for me. So don't go for the daemon set. Go with the deployment only. Deployment with the number of replicas are 4. Right? So it's based upon your requirement. Generally, all your applications will be deployed as a deployments only. All your applications will be deployed as a deployment. Only the logging applications like this, so fluentd, that needs to be run on each node. Okay, so those kind of things that you will be running as a daemon set. So do we have a daemon set already in your Kubernetes? kubectl get ds -n cube -system. Right, you can see two things here. So the kube proxy need to run on all the nodes, right? And your kubenet wavenet also need to run on all the nodes. So wavenet mechanism is like that. What is a wavenet, guys? It is a network plugin, CNI. Okay, it is a network plugin. It needs to run on all the nodes. It is going to provide the communication, pod communication, whether it is on the same node or whether it is in the different node. That is the reason why that needs to run on all the nodes. That is the reason why you are going with the daemon set. Right. So you may be asking, sir, it will be taking time for me to write the spec like this, right? So this much of spec. Maybe if they are asking something more, you may need to add few more things. So in the certification, how can I write this spec very fast way? kubectl create deploy. Deployment name. So I am going to show you how can we create a daemon set from a deployment spec. Okay, this is a workaround to create your daemon set spec very fast, because we need to do it very fast. kubectl create deployment name. I'll say my deployment name is ds2. -, image equal to whatever the image that they will be giving, nginx -dry -run -o aml ds2.aml vids2.aml. So now you modify this spec. Go to daemon set. Right, so labels and all fine. Replicas, you will not be having the replicas in your daemon set, right? Matching labels fine, strategy is fine, right? Templates, everything is fine.
There is a typo on the kind.
Yeah. So everything is fine, right? kubectl apply ds2.aml dry -run strategy ds2 one more number misscheduled status. Okay, let us remove the status. We don't want the status at all here. You need to bother about that, right? So how much time it will take for you? Less than a minute to create a daemon set spec. Okay, you don't need to you don't need to write from the scratch, but while you are practicing, you practice writing the spec. Okay, but in the certification, use this mechanism to save your time. To save your time, kubectl apply ds2.ml. Right, you are creating a daemon set. Okay. The next concept is important concept, right? Static pods. Okay, let me know one thing. If I want to create a container, should you run Kubernetes, or without Kubernetes also can we create the container?
It's very well possible.
Right. So there is no Kubernetes required if you want to create the container, right? Docker run command is sufficient for you. Right. Wonderful. You have Kubernetes setup. Okay. Assume like you have one master and two worker nodes. One master and two worker nodes. Okay. Where actually the workloads will be running, where the pods will be created.
Worker node.
Unknown.
Worker nodes.
How? What is the flow? So when you are requesting from the client, right, your API server is going to contact the scheduler. So scheduler is going to decide where the pod has to come, either this one or this one. Then that information will be saved will be shared to the API server. Then API server is going to contact to whom?
Kubelet.
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 Right. Does kubelet knows how to create the pod? No. It has to work with someone. Who is that? Docker. Right? Container runtime engine, Docker. So Docker is going to create the I can say container, but with respect to the Kubernetes, that is going to be a pod, right? Because Kubernetes doesn't know how to what is a container. Kubernetes doesn't know. Okay, Kubernetes knows only the pod. Pod is a virtual object on top of container, right? So so if someone are giving the instructions to your kubelet, it is creating the container or pod, right? Right. If can I give the instructions? Very important. Can I give the instructions to the kubelet? Can I give the instructions to the kubelet? In case, due to some reason, your master is down. Due to some reason, your master is down. So can I create a pod in my worker nodes? So earlier API server, yeah, by default it is no. Yes, your answer is right till now. Okay, earlier your API server is passing the instructions to the kubelet. But if there is a way that someone can pass the instructions to the kubelet, can kubelet create a pod? Definitely yes. Definitely yes, because it knows how to create by taking the help from your container runtime engine called Docker, right? So all you need to do here is that how can we give the instructions to your kubelet? I want to create a pod on the worker node or node 01. So how can I pass the instructions to my kubelet, right? Let me see how can we do that. Yes, it is possible. in case if your master node is down, still you will be able to create the pod. Only the pod, guys, not a service, not a deployment set, not a daemon set, not a replica set. None of the objects can be created because your kubelet knows only to create a pod, right? Rest of the objects and all top level objects which is going to use the pods. Okay, let me connect to a node. Okay, let me log into the master only. I don't know what is the port for the master. It must be 2200, I think.
2200 only.
No,
Last
that's
time you said
no.
like that only.
Yeah. But I'll be stopping and I'll be bringing up, right? If something got changed, it will not work. That is the reason. Okay. Yeah. Master. Vagrant. Let me check it once again. Why is not? Maybe if the port got changed while you are in the if the order gets changed while you're bringing up, so it will not work actually. So let me double check. 12200. So the port auth 21. Okay, May it is. Sorry. Vagrant. This time it is working. So no putty gem. Right. So now I am trying to find a way to pass instructions to my kubelet. How can I do that? ps-ef pipe grep kubelet. So kubelet is running on all the nodes at this moment. Kubelet is running on all the nodes at this moment because you have used the kubeadm tool, but it's not mandatory that it has to run on all the nodes. Okay. We need to find a config. Okay, this is the config file. If you open this file, there is a column called, there is a line called static pod path. Static pod path, right? This is the static pod path. If you want to give the instructions, to your kubelet in this location, you have to create a pod spec. kubectl create pod. kubectl create pod. Okay, I'll say static. So the name can be anything, guys. For you to identify the pod, I am giving the static pod. Okay, you can give any name. Your name also fine. Image equal to nginx, nginx. kubectl create pod, right? -dry -run -o aml, right? I am in the master node. I am creating a see, I don't need to use the command only. I can use the manifest file also, right? So you can create a manifest file also. So to make it simple, I am creating by using the KCP, because you may be asking that, sir, you told your API server is not working, then why kubectl will work? Kubectl will not work. Okay, you need to create a spec, a manifest file, right? So since I want to finish it quickly, I am using a command line, right? Static pod dot YAML, right? So before entering this, let me try to get, is there any pod named with static pod? kubectl get pod. See, both are same, guys. From master also it is going to connect to the API server. From the client also it is connecting to the API server only. Okay, so you don't need to confuse here. In the same way, like you will be connecting to the API server. Even your colleague also will be connecting to the API server. Same thing that I am doing here. kubectl get pod grep -i static. So as of now, there are no pods. Okay. Now what I am doing, I am creating a spec. I am not creating a pod. Do remember, I am just creating a spec where under the static pod path location, under the static pod path location, I am creating a spec. Okay. kubectl, here I do not have shortcuts. kubectl run. That is the actual command, right? For KCP. If you want, you can double check here.
Yes.
Okay, KCP. This is the shortcut. Okay, I just created the spec, guys. I just created the spec. ls-l, right? I just created the spec. Now you see, you can find the pod. You can find the pod, right? You can find the pod automatic. So when a spec finds in the manifest path, static pod path location, your kubelet automatically will take that and it will create a pod only on that node, because kubelet will be running on each node. So one kubelet will be there in your node 01, one kubelet will be there in your node 02, one kubelet will be there on your node 03. So each kubelet will be running in their own place. So whoever creating that, so they will be creating the pod along with the name of the node from where it has created. So how can I know whether it is in which node that it has created? See, after some time, assume like your master server is back. Assume like earlier your master server was not working, you need to create a pod. So you have created a pod by using the static pod path location. Now your API server comes back. So what you run kubectl get pods means your API server responding and working. But is it going to list this pod? Yes, there is going to be a mirror copy created in your API server. That is the reason why you are able to get this kubectl get pods. This pod you are getting here. So this pod, even API server can't delete it, because API server didn't give the instructions to the kubelet. API server didn't give it. So I gave the instructions. So API server For API server, this is only a read-only copy. This is only a read-only copy. It can't delete. It can't delete. Okay, so how can we delete this now? If you want to delete this, you need to delete this. Now, if you delete that, see, automatically your static pod is going to be deleted. So what actually the use of the static pod paths? What actually the use of static pod paths? Okay, let me ask you a question in this way. So if kubectl required to create the pod all the times, how can a master node component will be created before the API server comes into the picture? Kubectl kubectl get pods -n cube system. Can you see here? Your etcd is a master node component. I mean, it's a API server. It's a Kubernetes master node control plane component, right? Kube scheduler and API server, right? All these are the master node components. All these are the master node components. Can you see extension a master for all of them? Why it is? Why it is? Because all these four are the static pods. All these four are the static pods. That is the reason why, see here, if in case if you want to create the pod, if the API server should be there, means that API server is itself is a pod. How it has created? That is with the static pod concept it has created. But if that is the case, I should find the spec of API server, right? API server, etcd, controller manager, and scheduler. All these specs should be there in the master, right? Because you see here, it has created in the master node. It's a static pod that is created in the master node. Okay, let me see whether you have. This is your master node, guys. Whether you have the spec for this. You see here, we have a spec for etcd API server, controller manager, and scheduler, where they are in the master node. So the kubelet, which is running on the master node, is creating a pods for these specs. That is the reason why etcd-master, kube-API server-master, kube controller manager-master, all these will be created, right? So now you tell me, I told you while we are creating the Kubernetes cluster, either you can bring the master node components as a pods, or you can bring the master node components as a services also, right? Both the ways you can do it. And I told, if you are using your kubeadm tool to install Kubernetes, it is going to create the master node components as a pods. Okay, in case if you are creating a Kubernetes cluster by using services, by using master node components as a service, you don't need to run a kubelet on your master node. You don't need to run a kubelet on your master node. There is no need of that, because you are not going to create any pod on your master node, right? For example, for you, the exercise is, I am doing it on my master. So you create on a node Okay, so in the node, kubectl command will not work. Kubectl command will be there, but you will not be having a config file to create the API server. So definitely you cannot create a pod by using kubectl command. Find a manifest path on the nodes kubelet manifest path, or what I can say static pod path. Okay, static pod path location on the node 01 and try to create a pod template there. Okay, pod spec there. So when you see from your client kubectl get pods, you should see the pod name as the name that what you have given followed by hyphen node 01. You should be seeing that. Okay, once after doing that, you delete the spec from that location. Okay, in the certification, they are going to ask you the same question. Okay, they will be asking you to create a static pod. Okay, and immediate question is going to be a simple question with related to the pod, or deployment. So, sir, with related to the pod. So for that, you will be creating a pod spec, but you will be forgetting that you are in this location. So intention, or with the intention to complete quickly, you will not be coming out of this location. You will try to create a spec here, and you will modify everything according to the question. And when you are trying to apply, you will be getting a error message saying that the pod with this name is already existed and you are trying to modify the immutable field. You will be confusing. So I haven't created the pod. Why it is showing, it is saying this error message? Is something wrong, or am I in the different cluster? They will be giving 6 clusters, not 1. Am I in the different cluster? So for you to resolve, it will take 10 minutes. Why should you waste that time? So if you are working on the static path question, once after completion of that question, immediately come out of this path. Right, guys? So be careful in certification exam. Do remember this. So you need to come out of this location. That's it.
Babu, in this path, if we remove any file like a Kubernetes API server.yaml or any file by mistake,
It will delete the pod.
that API server part will be removed, right?
Yes.
Okay. In that case, our master will down.
Yes, of course. In the Kubernetes control plane, any one component is missing itself, master node is down, because it has its own communication process.
How to take backup of this?
That I will explain in the backup class.
Okay.
So suppose you are creating static pod. After that, now once this master is bring up back, okay, that created static pod details is there in etc.
Yes, as a read only.
Okay.
So when you are listing, you can list out that pod, but you can't delete with kubectl delete.
Okay. But that information is there in etcd, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Now I am going to discuss very important concept, particularly for developers and CKID preparation. Okay, so application life cycle. That doesn't mean that it is only for your developers, guys. See, one thing you should remember: developers are responsible for the develop environment only. Okay, so later that's your responsibility to maintain the int, stage, prod, all these environments that you have to maintain. Okay, so developer will be knowing what and all required for the applications to run, but how to set up them, you may need to explain the developer. Some developers knows about Kubernetes, some developers will not be knowing about the Kubernetes. So either way, you need to explain them, or you need to first create a specifications for them. So anything would be fine, depends upon the environment. See, if you take one environment, maybe developers are aware of Kubernetes, so you can just advise them how to create the spec by using the configurations environment variables. If you go to another environment, they don't know what is a Kubernetes at all. There are scenarios like that. That's why I'm telling. So you will be creating the deploy. You will be creating the specs, but inputs has to provided by your developer only. How you will come to know which environment variable that is required for their application, right? Definitely no. So that is the reason why you should know how to set the environment variables in your Kubernetes. And one thing you must be very clear, guys, 95% of the downtime happening for the applications because of just misconfiguring the configurations and the environment variables. Do remember. So you should be very, very, very clear while you are setting up the environment variables or the configurations. Do you have an option to set the environment variable in your Docker file?
Yes.
So same thing you will be doing from the Kubernetes point of view also. So you will be adding the required environment variables. You will be adding the required environment variables while you are creating the pod, right? So how can we set the environment variables in your pod spec? Let me create a pod. kubectl create pod. Pod name pod env -- image equal to nginx -- dry -- run -o_yaml pod env dot yaml. YAML. Right, I have a spec. So let me update the environment variable. You don't need to by heart this. So every time you can go to the pod spec. Under the pod spec, you have environment variables. Where is the containers? Go inside the container. See where exactly your application will be running inside the container. So you will be defining envs like this. Env, right? So inside the container, I am defining the env. Env is of type what? Array, right? It's an array. Name value. Name. What is the name? Key1. Next, value. Value 1. Right? I am creating a pod. kubectl apply pod env kubectl get pod env, right? That is running. Okay, kubectl. How to log in inside the pod?
kubectl
exe
Right. kubectl exec -it. What is I and what is T? Interactive terminal. Right. So pod. Let me use a shell. I am inside the pod. I am inside the pod. env. You will be seeing many environment variables. So those have come as part of the Docker file that they have created. On top of that, you are adding your environment variable here. You are adding your own environment variable, right? So like this, you can have n number of environment variable. Like this, you can have n number of environment variables. Right, port command aux. So you do not have an option to specify the environment variables in the command, and I'm thinking env. Okay. -env you can set here also. -env equal to this. -env equal. Let's see the man page. So I'm trying to pass envs also in the command line. Env environment variables to set the container.
The last line it is there, the syntax. env and value is in double quotes. Here on usage env.
Port, yes. Yes, like this you can give. In the double quotes, I'll say key 1 equal to value 1. So if I want to give the next one, right? I think we should give env every time. This is not mandatory that you need to learn. You can directly create the spec and you can do that one also. But I am trying to give you in the command line only. This time no dry run already exists. Right now you see kubectl get pod env1 kubectl exec -it bash right env pipe grep -i key, right? You can apply your environment variables like this from Kubernetes also. Okay, but how many environment variables will be there in your environment? This is very important, guys. Okay, I am giving a overall idea. So it can be the same or it can be even less than this. Environment specific variables. So it's a like global environment variable, means it is going to be applicable for all the applications. Global envs. So these envs are required for all the applications. Next, environment specific. Environment specific. For example, dev environment, we need to have these environment variables for all applications that are running in the dev. And for all the applications that are running in the int, you need to have this environment variables. Next, app specific. App specific. So that means Paytm, which is running anywhere, it will be having different set of environment variables, whether it can be a dev, prod, stays, int. On top of that, specific environment variable for that application. You see here. So for example, if you list out the environment variables for this, so this will include the global environment variables, environment specific environment variables, app specific environment variables. On top of that, you will be having the environment variables that is required for that application. See, if you combine all this, how many environment variables that you can see? You will not be surprising if you see 50 plus 50 plus environment variables. You will not be surprising by seeing 50 plus environment variables. Or will it, I will be having always 50 environment variables? No, it's not mandatory. You can run if you are going for a startup company, if they are not maintaining any standards, so you can see 4 or 5 environment variables also. It depends upon how your architect is designing, right? So if you are having 50 environment variables, is it a good idea to keep all the environment variables, in your pod spec? Okay, I am inside the pod. Let me come out. VI pod env. So if I start writing 50 times this, so how big is this going to your spec? And that's going to be good idea. Okay, for that reason, you have a option. To separate the environment variables from the pod, loosely coupling. So your configuration, your environment variables, that I am making a separate object. That separate object is called config map. What is that? Config map. So this config map is going to have, there are many use cases with the config map, but what I am talking is with respect to the environment variables. Okay, so here I am going to list out all the environment variables. Config map is also an API object in your Kubernetes. So you will be creating a config map, and you will be while creating your pod, you will be injecting this config map into your pod. Okay, so this is called loosely coupled. Okay, so this config map I can use for my another pod also, right? So this is what that I am going to do. kubectl create. The shortcut for the config map is CM. By the way, how do you know the shortcuts? How do you get the shortcuts?
API resources.
kubectl, not get, guys. Generally, when you are typing, you will get first this kubectl get. Okay, API resources grep config. config maps shortcut is CM. Okay. So is it a namespace component? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. kubectl create CM -help. kubectl create config map name. So I want to run this. kubectl create config map name, right? From from literal key equal to value. You need to repeat this. How many key value pairs that you have, those many times you have to repeat this. Okay. Created kubectl get CM. Since I didn't mention the namespace, it will be creating in your default namespace, guys. If you, this is a namespace wide component, that means this config map with the same name, it can be there in your dev namespace, it can be there in your int namespace also, right? Because those are namespace wide component. What is a namespace? A virtual separation, a partition of your cluster, right? Okay, how many key value pairs that you have? Two here. Okay, now how can you can describe this? kubectl create describe CM name, right? Under the data, you can write the spec also like this. You can write the spec also like this for the config map. Control F config. Okay, config map. You can write the spec. API version data kind metadata. Those four objects will be sufficient. Okay, so you can create it. So instead of the spec, you will be having the data here. Otherwise, you can come here and you can look for the config map. Anything is fine. Config map. Config maps. You can see how can we create a config map, right? Under the data, you are having key value pairs. So this is a key and this is a value. So this is a key, this is a value. This is a key, this is a value. You can have like that also. I will be showing that. Okay, so that way also you can create. Okay, let me make use of this config map with the pod. Okay, so kubectl create pod env3 .yaml. Something is missing. kubectl create pod - image dry - run. Already there are what?
YAML type.
YAML spelling.
Right. Now you have a pod. So what is your config map name? What is your config map name? my-config, right? My-config. This is my config map name. Okay, how can we use this inside your pod spec? Go to your pod spec. If you can practice thoroughly, it will be easy for you jump here and there and complete your spec, guys. So go inside the container spec. So if you want to go to the container spec, you can click on this, or if you want to do it even faster, there is a container spec here. You can directly click that. So both are same. Both are same. Okay, env. Env from config map reference. So inside the config map reference, name of the config map. Okay, so I am going to use env from inside the container spec. Env from is an array, right? So config map ref. So you should be very careful while writing, because you will be having many options with the config map. So I am using config map ref. Okay, do remember. Config map ref is a dictionary. So name of my config map. Name of my config map. What is my config map name? My -config, I think, right? My -config. Right. See, I am injecting the config map inside my pod. kubectl apply. kubectl get pod. kubectl get pod running. kubectl exec-it. See, when I am using the pod spec, means that you can do the same with the deployments also. Do remember. kubectl exec-it, because there also you will be having the pod spec only, right? env. See here, these are the two values that I have passed from my config map. From my config map. Now I have a question. Sir, I am having a config map, right? I am having a config map. I have injected this inside the pod, and this pod is up and running. Okay, so what in case if I change this spec? What in case if I update the environment variable? Is it going to update in your pod spec? Yes or no? If yes, how? If no, why?
No.
No. No is the correct answer. No is the correct answer. So when you update your config map, when it is being used already by the pod, when you modify the config map, it will not update in your pod spec. So for that, what you need to do? You have to restart the pod, or you have to recreate the pod. Do remember. But when you are using the Helm, so how can we restart the pod? Do we have an option to restart? Definitely no. Right? You need to delete and recreate. You need to delete and recreate. But when you are using the deployment, with the deployment, do you have an option to restart? Yes or no? From 1.15 onwards, they have included the option kubectl rollout restart. You will not work with the pods, guys. You will be working with the deployment only. So the same pod spec will be there in the deployment also. kubectl roll out restart. Okay, if you see -help, rollout deployments -help. Okay, can you see here? Restart. This option was not there before 1.15. In 1.15 only they have added this. They have added this. Means if you want to restart your pod for any reason, which is part of this deployment, you can just run rollout restart deployment and deployment name. So your deployment is going to create the new one with the new spec. Then it will be deleting the old one to avoid the downtime. Okay, so that's how it is going to perform. But when we are using the Helm, there is a trick that we are going to apply to roll out these changes automatically. So you do one thing. you create the pod. You create a deployment spec. How many times that you do kubectl apply for that deployment, when it is already running, your deployment will not happen anything. Okay, so it will be keep running. So sometimes you may need to restart your deployment. There is a reason for that. So for suppose if you have created a deployment spec and you are running the deployment, so without you do any change your deployment spec, 100 times if you apply also, nothing will change for your running application, running deployment. So if you want to roll out the changes, there should be some changes. So generally what do you change? Image version, right? Image version. You will be maintaining the image version, so that will be keep changing. But in the develop environment, always you will be referring to the develop only. So once after you are done with the feature branch, you will be merging the feature branch with the develop. Always you will be using the develop. So but the image is new. I agree that image is new, but there won't be any changes in your deployment spec. So if you restart this one also, nothing will happen. I mean to say, when you apply the spec, kubectl apply for this spec, nothing will happen. So that time what you will be doing, kubectl rollout restart deployment. So what will happen? It is going to restart the pod, means it is going to create a new pod. Since the pull policy you are going to put always, it is going to pull the develop image, the latest develop image, and it is going to create the pod by using the latest develop image. So the latest development updates will be available in that image. So that is the one of the best use case when you use the restarting of your deployment. Right. If you don't understand this part, you can ignore. Okay. While you are working, you will be knowing this. That time, if you are revising this video, you will be able to understand what I explained here. Okay. Questions on DaemonSet, questions on environment variables, and questions on static parts. Questions, please.
The exercise what you said is we will have to
you need to go to node 01. You need to find a kubelet static path location. Okay, and then you need to create a pod spec there. You don't need to create a pod because you cannot create. kubectl create will not work there, right? You will not be having a config file in your .cube directory of node 01, so you can't connect. So you need to create a pod. How? So you need to place a spec in your pod manifest path. One more thing, guys. So you are finding the pod manifest path like this. Where is that? Okay. Okay, so like this you are getting it, and where is that conf? Okay, So sometimes in this file, it's not mandatory that they should have, oh shit. It's not mandatory that they should have the static pod path directly. Indirectly, instead of saying this, what they will say, config : they will give a file name here. Okay, that is also possible. So config : the file name they will give. You have to take that file name, and you need to, if you open that file name, the static pod path will be applied there. Static pod path location you can find from there. So that is also possible. If you can't find the static pod path in this file, that doesn't mean that there is no static pod path. So they will be giving config : the file name where the static pod path displayed. Okay, you need to open that file and you need to get the static pod path location. Yeah, that is the thing that you need to do. Okay, you need to create a pod spec in your pod manifest path location. Okay, static pod path location, and you verify from your client whether that is pod is getting created. If it is getting created, is it having a extension with node 01 or not, you verify, and then you delete the pod. That exercise on top of the practice, not by leaving your practice and doing that. Okay, so whatever that I had explained, you need to practice, and on top of that you need to perform this activity. Right, guys?
Okay, Babu.
Okay, give me a second, don't drop.
Babu, this environment variables we define into that pod specs only. No? So if we want to define global environment variables, we can define.
Whatever the environment variable, this is the way that you can define. Global, local, environment specific, app specific, whatever it is. For you it is a global, local, but for Kubernetes it is environment variable only. Am I right? Yes or no? Okay, right, guys, thank you so much. See you tomorrow. Bye for now.